Hello and welcome to Bad Community Advice. This is the show where we ask community professionals to come on and share their terrible tips and toxic takeaways. I'm your host. My name is Seth Resler. I am the founder of Community Marketing Revolution. And on the show today, we have a special guest. He is the head of ecosystem and community at Glide. I want to welcome Andy Claremont. Andy, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning, Seth. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Let's start here. Before we get to your bad advice, what exactly is Glide for people who are not familiar? What do you do there?
For sure. So Glide is a no-code development platform for business apps. It's a long-winded way of saying you can build custom software without writing code. So we provide the platform for that. You can go and build whatever apps you want to get more work done.
Got it. And so when we talk about the community there, what does that community actually look like? Who's in it and what are they doing?
We have a large, amazing community, largely made of builders, and our Glide experts, who are folks who build Glide apps for others, are like the VIPs of the community. They are the ones who contribute the most, participate the most, ask the most questions. So it's really folks who are building Glide apps.
Oh, very cool. And talk to me a little bit about what the day-to-day looks like for you there. I mean, what are you doing on an average day or week?
Well, for sure. Well, the funny thing about Glide is because we are still an early stage startup, everybody wears multiple hats. So for me, on an average day, it depends on what mode I'm in. So if I'm in community manager mode, I am in the trenches, dealing with customers, community members, answering questions, resolving issues, working with our community moderators, jumping into our private Slack community for Glide experts. That's community manager 101 day. Other days, I'm more of a partner manager dealing with our ecosystem partners. So it could be technology integration partners or strategic partners that we build things with. It really shifts depending on the mode, but there's always like some project for the day that I'm focused on banging out.
I did want to ask you about that. What is the difference between community and ecosystem in this context?
You know, it's funny because when I talk to a lot of other folks who identify as, ecosystem builders or ecosystem leaders within their organizations, it skews heavily towards partnerships. But then within the realm of partnerships, it's largely folks coming from a sales background. So maybe BD, account managers, they've been doing channel partnerships or something for a long time. I'm coming into ecosystem from a community background because I've been doing community stuff for 15-ish years. So I'm coming at it from this idea of facilitating connections between members and, the 1 + 1 = 3 and the greater sum of the output of the group, while they're coming at it more from a like one-to-one relationship, business development partnerships side. So what I'm finding now and how we're trying to approach ecosystem and Glide is that it's like a best of both worlds. We want to take that deeper one-on-one relationship with partners and really strengthen those, while at the same time thinking about our partners as this more cohesive community. It's a big group of people that we're doing stuff with, and through doing stuff with them, we're creating even more value for our mutual customers, mutual users, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And you are working in the software as a service space, right? Where
That's right.
I think the concept of community has been around for a little bit longer than a lot of other industries. So, and there may be people from other industries who are not as familiar with how this concept works. So let's talk about it a little bit. In this case, where does community sit in the org chart? Are you in customer success or customer support?
So community for Glide sits within marketing, but community is a shared resource, right? So we have our customer success team are paying attention to the community because it's a great source of insights into the day-to-day issues that users are having. We crowdsource a lot of feedback, suggestions, bug reports, that sort of thing. The classic community stuff that SaaS companies have been using community programs for a long time. Customer success is wired into that because it's the sort of thing that they care about because they can action the insights coming out of the community. On the other side, product is paying close attention too because they're like customer success. They're looking for the insights coming out of the users that they can feed back into the product development cycle. So they're paying attention as well, and our sales team too, because there's that 360 view on customers. If you know not only the conversations you're having with them one-on-one, but are they posting in the forum? What questions are they asking there? Are they showing up at community events? Like if we do webinars, what things are they interested in? All of this feeds back into the sales and account management side too. So really community, even though we sit within marketing, it's a shared resource for the entire organization. Everybody gets value out of it in some way.
Got it. And how do you measure what you're doing? I know that this is a tricky question for a lot of community managers, but what do you look at when you're looking for, is this working?
It's funny because it kind of goes back to that previous point about like it depends on what you're trying to do. Like community is the shared resource, right? And when I talk to folks and I try to define what a community is, I always say that it's a persistent, connected group of people with something in common. It's about the people. It's not about a particular platform or place. It's the group. So if you are focusing on, are we getting feedback from the community? Are we actioning that feedback? Are we resolving issues? Are we acting on suggestions and implementing them into the product? Are we closing the loop, basically? On the other side, if we're talking more about support, where it's a break fix, are we escalating issues to the right channel if we can't triage it in a public forum? Are people getting responded to very quickly? That's one of the things I really try to look for is like, what is the response rate for anybody who posts in a community channel? Are they being heard? Are they being responded to? What's happening with those responses? So it depends on the specific program that you're running with the community and looking at the success metrics tied to that program.
Got it. And I heard you mention Slack. Is that the primary home for your community?
It is one of the primary homes. So we have a public forum hosted on Discourse, which is a fantastic kind of traditional forum software, especially for a SaaS company. That's been around for 6 years. Lots of rich insights in there and conversations and guides from our contributors and experts. So that's the bulk of it. But we have a private Slack as well, exclusive to our certified Glide experts. So folks who have met certain criteria in our partner program, they get invited to this group. That's about 300 some experts as of this week. So there is action happening there that's behind closed doors, but we're feeding everything back into the organization. We're paying attention to all of these different channels because they all serve different purposes and the dynamics are a bit different depending on, what aspect of it you're looking at.
Got it. So that's what it all looks like. Let's take a moment to talk about your bad advice. And here's what it is. Community marketing doesn't work. So let's actually take a moment to talk about what we mean by community marketing and tell me the circumstances under which you received this piece of advice.
So we're going back about 11 years at this point. At the time, I was really doing community more on the side. Like I've always done community stuff at some level, but back then it was a thing that I was doing on the side in terms of like organizing local user groups, doing conferences, a lot of professional development type stuff, networking. And I had this opportunity to join GoDaddy as their founding community manager for GoDaddy Pro, which was their partner program for folks like myself who were building websites for others, doing web development for clients. And when I spoke to my then boss about this opportunity, the basic advice I got was like, don't do it. This won't work. Community marketing doesn't work. We've tried this before. It won't succeed. And in hindsight, I'm glad I did not heed that advice. But that's what I ended up walking into was this last piece of advice being what you're about to set out to do doesn't work. And, here we are 11 years later, and it's kind of defined my career since then. So,
yeah,
bad advice.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the marketing role that community can play, because it's interesting to me that for you, you're in the marketing department, even though obviously, like you said, you touch all these other departments. Because I think a lot of software as a service companies view it as customer service or customer support.
Yeah.
I'm old. I call it customer support, not customer success. When I call up the cable company, I'm not looking for success. I'm just looking for help.
You just want the thing to work.
Right.
Yeah, for
but,
sure.
but that's where I think it lives for a lot of people. Talk about community specifically, with respect to marketing, and what you've seen work there and why you think it works.
It's funny now because today it seems like community has become this factor that everyone acknowledges is hugely powerful and one of the best ways to do marketing, because it's all based on building this strong following, turning that following into a community, into this connected group, and the multiplier effect of that in being able to reach a larger audience, a larger market than you would be able to on your own. Especially over the last 10 years, the effectiveness of performance marketing and doing, paid conversion campaigns on social, like that has started to really maybe not fall off a cliff, but it's not as effective as it used to be. And now there's this realization that, if we have this strong community of people who align with us and we're doing things with them, we're going to be able to tap into that and leverage that to be able to reach even more people. 10 years ago, there was maybe an inkling of a sense of that, but it wasn't at the level that it is today. So when I came into this and started thinking about community marketing 10 years ago, it was this really simple belief that drew on my experience doing, open source software and web development communities, and that if you're able to help people succeed at using your product, but even more than that, helping them succeed at whatever it is that they're trying to do, you're leading by helping. And it's not just a one-on-one, but you're doing it in a group setting. So that interaction can scale and help more people. That's going to have a knock-on effect, because then other people are going to see what they're missing out on. They're going to be able to benefit from this group interaction, and then it can carry on from there. So that's how I thought about it coming into the role. And since then, it's been more and more of not just how does community marketing work as a practice on its own, but how does community as a thing become beneficial for all these other functions within the organization. But marketing was where I started.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that you say that. I keep hearing the term lately, community as a moat. And I think what they're saying is that the barrier to entry to so many of these other channels, you mentioned performance marketing. I come from content marketing, and I'm old enough that when I started my career, if you wanted to create content and reach a large number of people, you needed a television station, a radio tower, a printing press. And now anybody with a phone can do it. The robots can do it, and so we're starting to see that there's just no barrier to entry. But it's exactly like you said, is that it's not just that I need the content. I need somebody to help me use that content and figure out how to get me to do whatever it is I'm trying to do. And I think that's the role the community plays.
Yeah, and there's this other thing too about how audience evolves to become community, because they're very much related, but they're two different things. Like audience, to your point about, you think back to broadcast and where everything started, it's you on stage to an audience. It's one to many. Community takes that and says, okay, well, what if we were to take that audience and instead of everybody facing the stage, we have these people facing each other. And now instead of the interaction, the collaboration being like, I'm going to do something, maybe there's a little bit of crowd work, maybe there's a little bit of call and response. Instead of that, it's we're going to facilitate as community managers, community leaders. Maybe we'll break the ice. We'll get some things seeded out there with the content that we create. But it's really more about getting this group that's in front of us to do things together, because all of those relationships, all of those interactions, all that collaboration that we are able to inspire and sustain is going to be able to do more than what we can do ourselves. So that's where you start to see the energy grow in a community. And then if you think about it in terms of like radiating out from the center, that's the moat, because suddenly you have this community, these people bought into the same vision and the same thing that you're doing. So now it's much harder for someone else to hit that level, because you're already further along. You have that community growing and scaling the impact that you can make because they're doing stuff on their own, right? So when you're thinking about how do we enter a market, if there's a business that already has especially in SaaS, like there's a SaaS company that has a thriving community, well, what does that mean? That means that there's probably partnerships going on. There's contributions coming in terms of like other people adding to the platform, maybe extending it, complementing it in certain ways, adding additional services on top of that. And that's where you start getting into the ecosystem side in SaaS. But it really is that, like, all these people, all that energy, that's the moat, right? And you're facilitating versus just like pushing out to an audience.
Yeah. I love what you said there, because I find that in dealing with people who are not, well versed in the world of community, the difference between audience and community, even if they get it at a surface level, it takes a while to sink in. And you said something there that has become an analogy that's helped me a lot, is to look at the seats and look at the ways that they're pointed. And, I've done a lot of event production. My first experience in event production was producing concerts. And concerts are fantastic, but they don't necessarily build a lot of community because, anytime the seats are all pointed in one direction, whether it's to a stage or a screen, you're probably building audience. And what you pointed out there is that when you turn the seats and all of a sudden people are talking to each other, that's when you really start building the community, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. One of my favorite formats for this, because I cut my teeth on doing these user conferences and events like that. So there's always like someone on stage. Great. It's one thing to have your auditorium classroom set up. You got all these chairs and everyone's just staring at the stage. That's good for some things, maybe in inspirational keynotes, whatever. But my favorite setup is when you have you go to the group lunches and it's just all these round tables everywhere, those breakouts. To me, that's the best, because suddenly it's, we're going to put you at this table with a handful of other people, because it's really hard to build community with hundreds or thousands of people. But when you break it down, what these actually are more discrete units of smaller groups of people. Like, how many people can you fit in a car? 4 or 5 people sitting at a table, getting to know each other, and then, breaking away, maybe going and sitting at another table, meeting some other people, and you're starting to build those connections and opportunities between people. Like, to me, that is it. Like, it's more of a mix of dinner and a show than it is going to see a concert. Trying to stick with your analogy there.
Well, I noticed that in my own experience over the years. I could never explain why. I'm starting to be able to now, but when I would go to conferences, I hated the lobby. I hated and I just remember being at certain conferences and the hotel elevator doors would open and you could hear the lobby before you'd see it, and my stomach would sort of turn. And I always liked peeling off into those small groups that you're talking about. I've heard Carrie and Melissa Jones and Charles Vogel, for example, call them campfires, where people sort of break into these smaller groups, these subgroups. And I've been at conferences with things like brain dates, where they set up people in round tables to talk amongst a certain topic. Yeah, I really like that. How do you facilitate that within your own community?
So there's a few things that there's 3 big things. The first one is I'm surprised it's taken this long actually for there to be this much appetite for it, but it's the intentional networking, like facilitating the matchmaking and the connection between members. There has been a little uptick in startups and products coming online to do this sort of thing, where it's like, hey, you have this community of hundreds of people. They want to connect with others in the group. Like, that's one of the reasons they'll join a community, especially like a peer association or a professional community group. They want to connect with others like themselves or people that they want to learn from, but we haven't done a ton to facilitate those intentional connections. So one of the easy things that you can do to start with is just make it like a self-serve thing that you can come into the community and be like, this is the stuff that I can help others with. These are the things that I need help with, or the things that I'm interested in, and being able to do that sort of matchmaking, this kind of like professional Tinder within the community of like, who do you want to connect with? So that's a like a self-serve next step from a members directory. The second thing that we've started doing, and actually just had our first go yesterday with our Glide experts, is just setting time on the calendar for people to jump into a Zoom call, and then we hit the breakout rooms button, and it's completely random. But for people who want that time and they want that face-to-face and they want to connect with new people within the group, we tested this out last fall with this cohort that we ran for our partners, and it went over really, really well. And based on the feedback, it was one of the top 3 things that everybody loved from that program. So yesterday we started up the new series to do this again, not just with that cohort of 120 people, but now for the hundreds of experts in the community, to give them that chance. Every week we're going to do a breakout session, and you're going to come in. Well, we'll have a banter, and then we're going to hit the breakouts, and you're going to go and be paired with 2 or 3 other people, so you can start to get to know who else is in this community. So it's a campfire instead of this giant lobby, right? And then the third thing is being much more. It's being much more intentional about introducing people. So like proactively knowing that, hey, you as a community member have these traits and you're working on these things. Who else in the community should I connect you with? And making it a proactive motion as a community leader to make those introductions. These sorts of things, these facilitations, make the community stronger, because those relationships add resiliency to the group overall. Because, hey, my buddy's in this group. I don't want to leave this group. I want to be active in this group because I know this guy, this girl. We know each other. That's what makes us stronger as a community.
So if I'm hearing you right, you view some of your role as being a matchmaker, as connecting the right people to the right other people.
Yeah, and just making that part of the job as a community manager. Like we can do some content creation and stuff, but really our ultimate responsibility is to facilitate. Like there's a content creation role in that, but it's more about getting other people up and running, getting them along for the ride, because the community is all of us. It's not an audience, right? Like the activity has to be there for it to really thrive.
Let's go back to your bad advice, because when you said it originally, community marketing won't work. I assumed that it was in the context of, this is not a good marketing strategy, but it sounds like it was in the context of career advice. It was, don't pursue community marketing as a path. Can you talk about how you have seen that evolve in the time that you've been doing? And what would you say to people who are thinking about community marketing as a path now?
What I would say now, if you're thinking about community marketing explicitly, I would say it's one area to start. But then if you're really thinking about community and you're driven by community, it's what other things can community contribute to? What other things can community do? Community marketing, I think, is a really strong starting point, because if you can get community activities and these connections and things going early on, there's the value of that is incredibly strong. Being able to pull out things like the testimonials and the case studies and the just the stories of these individuals who are in the community. And when we think about what is marketing ultimately, is about how you show up in market, right? We just get down to the bare bones of it. So how do you show up in market? It's not just about you. It's about the people that you're helping, and it's about their stories and how they're succeeding. And we talk about that all the time, like the hero's journey, right? And as a brand, you don't want to be the hero. You're Yoda, you're Obi-Wan, you're helping the hero progress. So starting with community marketing and thinking about your community members, it's how do we tell the stories of our community members and make them the heroes? And how do we facilitate that, and how do we do that? And then you can go from there, because that in itself, you're going to get the deliverables that marketing cares about, because it all comes back to what are you putting out there? What's the reach? How does it resonate? you're getting those things, but then it becomes this like stepping off point for, when we're having these conversations and we're making these introductions, there are things that we'll overhear and that we can bring back to the rest of the team. So suddenly you're also doing a little bit of research, and there's some market research reconnaissance going on there, and that's really valuable. So you're just kind of like plus one, plus one, plus one as you find momentum and start getting those wins. And then you can start, branching out.
I want to take that analogy you used of Obi-Wan or Yoda, and I kind of want to expand it out, but then it feels belabored. Like if you're selling lightsabers, what you really want to do is train Jedi Knights. But
what's the saying? You sell the pickaxe? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but absolutely. Well, look, this has been fantastic. Let me ask you one final question, and this is a question that I ask all my guests. Make a prediction. I mean, where do you think, community is going to be in 5 years? What do you think we're going to see in this space?
So 5 years ago, I made a prediction that we would see I said the pendulum would swing back from these massive social media platforms into more intentional niche groups of interest and purpose. And I feel like that's happened. I feel like we're on that track, and we're seeing a lot of that now with platforms like Circle that are creating the spaces and the tooling needed to facilitate those groups. So I think what we're going to see over the next 5 years, especially as AI continues to crank and there's more and more stuff out there demanding our attention, community becomes that refuge where you are trying to find that genuine person-to-person relationship, that person-to-person connection, because there's the trust and the humanity in that. And that's where community thrives, because it's not just about chatting with Claude or chatting with ChatGPT and asking questions and getting answers. It's about the context of it, right? So it's one thing for me to get an answer from an LLM that's trained up on a bunch of data. It's another thing to talk to somebody who maybe they're a peer, so like myself, they're a parent, they have a young kid or young kids, they're at a certain position in their life and in their career. Like all of those things influence that relationship. I'm not going to get that from AI. And that's where community comes in to help you find those connections, because they will matter over the next 10 years, over the next 5 years, more than ever before. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know how old your kids are, but let me tell you, when they get ready to get their first cell phone, I've been through this.
Not there yet, thank goodness.
But I wouldn't have given
I have
to
a
be able to talk
4-year-old,
to somebody who has been through it. So, yes. Andy Claremont, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. I really appreciate it. You're the head of ecosystem and community at Glide, and you have wonderful bad community advice.
Thanks for having me.